If a man gets to hear negative comments, negative labeling from others, it is also a projection. By corollary, you can draw this inference that when a man is not at peace with himself, means there's a lot of contradiction within his personality, within himself. So when the world hits at him or hits out at him, it's a part of him that is actually hitting out at him. That the action of a man at peace is never ineffectual. This word Aryan, it has been misused, particularly in the West. And there again within the West, by a particular sect of people, not even a sect, a particular ideologically inclined political party, the Nazis, who mistook it for something else. Arya word comes from the Greek word Aryan, which means one who is effective in action. And the whole country that we live in, not the country in which we live in today, because this is a very truncated country. It extended right from Afghanistan till Southeast Asia, Aryavrat as it was called. It was called Aryavrat because the people who lived in it were so spiritually anchored that they were men of peace. And because they were men of peace, I'm talking of the times when Rig Veda was created, of the Vedic times. The people were men of peace, unlike what Western historians present the truth of Rig Veda. They were men of peace, and because they were men of peace, their word, their action, their thoughts, all were coherent and also effective. That is why you get to hear in the Puranas of a concept called Shrap. What do you mean by Shrap? Shrap was said to be a condition created by virtue of the word of a rishi. Who was a rishi? A rishi was an individual who was at peace with himself, who had anchored himself in what I call zero consciousness, that is, in the transcendental absolute truth, who was anchored, whose consciousness was anchored in that, and yet operated in this world as it was in the reality as depicted in the Bible before the fall of Adam and Eve. Such a man, when he or she would utter anything, that would come to pass. Because his words were surcharged with energy. Usually in most people, ordinarily in people, the mind of man. Their minds are so distributed and confused that their minds lack the power to will something to happen. If the mind of man becomes unidirectional, becomes single-minded, focused on one, it becomes as potent as does a lens when it is kept in front of the sun rays, and you make the rays of the sun to focus on a point on a piece of paper. What happens? When the rays converge at the focal point on the paper, it burns. Such is the power of the mind. But because human mind is always dispersed in its thoughts, your mind is running in one direction, in 1,001 directions. You're thinking at times about your mother, sometimes friend, everything. All these thoughts are crowding your mind, and your mind is dispersed. It's like an atom in which the positive and negative charges are so enmeshed that it lacks any charge. It lacks any power. But when you magnetize that element, what happens? Positive charges go one side, negative one side, it becomes a magnet. And look at the power of the magnet. It can pull and repel things. So is the case with the human mind. So if you make your human mind powerful, it depends. Most of our entire educational system is not geared to develop the power of the mind. We are told how to collect information, process information, that's it. Nobody ever tells us how to empower our minds. So to empower your mind, you have to prune your mind. The thoughts that are crowding like weeds in your mind, prune them. You should become the master of your mind instead of the mind mastering you and pulling you in different directions, as is indicated in the image of the chariot in which Krishna is seated. You must have seen in all books, Bhagavad Gita books, on the cover page you have the picture of Shri Krishna seated as the charioteer and Arjun at the back. If you decode this image, you find that this image is a symbol. It's a symbol of the human mind. Why? The four horses are the senses, and they're yoked. And who holds the stirrups? The charioteer. The charioteer is the intellect. So it holds the senses. If it releases the tension, they run. And if it were to completely release the stirrups and they were to be unyoked, then what would happen? The horses would run in different directions. Then all hell would be let loose. The chariot will not be able to go in one direction. So is the case with man. Who is the person, the individual? The individual is the Arjun standing behind Shri Krishna. Shri Krishna represents intellect. So the intellect has to, through the intellect, the man sitting in the chariot is like a body, has to control the senses. You have to regulate, not control, but regulate. the senses. You have to become the master of the senses. Otherwise, the senses will carry you wherever they want. And because the senses are always looking for fodder, and wherever they will find the grass greener, they will try to rush in over there to graze over there. So the chariot of your body will be pulled in different directions, and you will become a powerless man. So you need to harmonize. You need to harmonize your senses with your intellect. When you do that, you become a single. You become a man with a mission, a man with a goal, with a target. And when you are target oriented, you decide, and depending on the targets you have fixed, you work in one direction. You make your senses also to work in that particular direction, so you achieve results. So cohering, harmonizing, that is very important.